Good afternoon and welcome to Connect to Create a Future webinar series organized by the Department of Psychology's Manotejika, a helpline initiative of Listening and Learning Center, St. Aloysius College, Mangalore. As George Couros rightly said, technology will not replace great teachers, but technology in the hands of great teachers can be transformational. That being said, I would like to invite you all to our third online alumni outreach and alumni reconnect program, Connect to Create Future. I am Vrinda, a student of 3rd BA Psychology, moderating this webinar on Chase Your Dreams, It's Worth It, My Story. Today, we have with us Ms. Sharix Alicia, an alumnus of the college and department. Sharix came to St. Aloysius College on a study abroad program from State University of New York in the year 2015. She is now working as an attorney with MacArthur and English, a law firm in the United States of America. During this session, in order to enable the smooth streaming of the presentations of the resource person and our efficient interaction with the participants, I request you all to pay attention to the following guidelines and help us execute this webinar. As you join the webinar, kindly ensure that your mic is on mute and remains so during the course of presentation. Our technical coordinator will unmute you if you have a question during the question answer round. You may use the chat function to exchange messages or send responses and question to all or privately to a participant. Please keep your reflection or questions brief. You may interact with the speaker when the question and answer session is open to the audience. If your video is turned on, kindly try to maintain an attentive stance and be aware of your movements as they may be a cause of distraction to the speaker. I would like to bring to your notice that this session is recorded and will be uploaded on Manotejika website www.manotejika.com. It will also be streaming live on our YouTube. The encouragement and enthusiasm to start these unique programs is always backed by our beloved principal, Reverend Dr. Father Praveen Matis SJ and Reverend Father Dionysius Vaz, Rector, Aloysian Institutions, Director of Learning and Listening Center, and co-founder of Manotejika. I would like to invite Dr. Vincent Mascarenhas, Dean, International Program, St. Aloysius College, to give his introductory note. Dr. Vincent was instrumental in initiating the study abroad program in 2015.
Everyone, I'm Ms. Sharix. It is good to have you back with us again. It's a privilege for me to say a few words at the beginning of this well-thought-through session. Ms. Sharix, I remember you as a part of the pioneering set of students of the year 2016 batch that led the other students from SUNY Coatland to study in St. Aloysius College. It gives us immense pleasure to hear back from you now in your capacity as an accomplished licensed lawyer in the United States, an expert in financial and commercial aviation matters, a doctor of jurisprudence, an MBA from the University of Connecticut, an editor of the Connecticut Insurance Law Journal, and vice president of the Black Law Students Association. Without cutting further into your valuable time, on behalf of everyone here, and again, thanking you for the wealth of information that you're going to share with us, we wish you a tremendous future. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Shalini Ayyappa, Head of the Department of Psychology, to brief us about this unique program.
A very good afternoon to the audience and a very good morning to Sherix. It's 5 a.m. in the United States. Uh, I'm really happy to see Sherix here on the screen. Uh, just a few words before Sherix can take over. A dream does not become reality through magic. It takes sweat, determination, and hard work. To keep our spirits high and to look forward to a future, we need personal stories of grit and determination, especially during these hard times and new normal. Sherix is an epitome of hard work and determination. So, Sherix, we are looking forward to your session and thank you, and over to Vrunda.
Thank you, ma'am. The guest speaker for our third webinar series is Ms. Sherix Alicia. Ms. Sherix Alicia is an attorney with MacArthur and English in the United States of America. She focuses on a range of complex bankruptcy and commercial litigation matters, including those involving leading and financial services, creditors' rights, real estate disputes, insurance coverage matters, and other contractual disputes. Prior to joining MacArthur and English, Sherix handled general and commercial aviation matters throughout the country. She is active in her community and currently serves on the Puerto Rican task force of the New York City Bar. Sherix earned her Juris Doctorate and Master's in Business Administration from the University of Connecticut, where she was Symposium and Right on Editor for Connecticut Insurance Law Journal, the first recipient of NAMWOLF Pipeline Diversity Scholarship, and an interpreter for Asylum and Human Rights Clinic. Sherix also served as a vice president of Black Law Students Association and the president of Latinx Law Students Association. Sherix is licensed to practice in New York and Connecticut, and we can also proudly say that she is an alumnus of St. Aloysius College Autonomous. We are extremely delighted to have you, Sherix. Over to you.
Thank you, Brenda, and thank you, Madam Shalini. First, you guys make me sound a lot more impressive than I am, and so I am very appreciative towards that. The first thing that I'm going to do is share my screen so that everyone can see, everybody can see the PowerPoint that I would like to show you. One second. So it looks like I'm still, oh, I got it. Okay, so let's hope this works, because we all know that technology is complicated. So the title of this is called Chase Your Dreams, It's Worth It. And before I go deeply into the topic or deeply into myself, I want to establish some rules for the group about our discussion. So first, I want everybody to know that this is supposed to be a conversation. And I know it's hard because of the style of the webinar, but I'd like everybody to use the chat function as much as you can. Because to the second point, this conversation has everything to do with you and nothing to do with me, oddly enough. The purpose of this is so that I can impart some of my lessons and teachings onto you. And so that doesn't work very well if you don't engage. So ask as many questions as you want. You can wait until the end to the Q&A portion, but I also understand that there could be some differences between, for example, I'll explain how I did my education here versus how it would be done over there. So feel free to interject throughout. And Brenda, if you want to stop me and you want to ask, I welcome that. I think that's how we will have the most fruitful discussion. So again, this is not a lecture. This is a conversation, and make sure that you take ownership of this and ask anything and everything that you want to ask me. I am an open book, as you will find out throughout this webinar. Now, so what are we going to talk about? The first thing that we're going to talk about is this whole meaning of, is it worth it? Because it's in the title. And as you know, I'm a lawyer, so we have to be very skeptical about the assertions that we're making. Is it actually worth it? And then I'm going to go into some background, because I don't think you can understand the lengths to which I've traveled without knowing where I've come. And then I'll go deeper into actually what I've done throughout my life. So the first part is it worth it? And here's where, if it's possible, I would like you all to use the chat function if you can. So why do you think that chasing your dream is worth it? And feel free to put it in the chat function. And Brenda, if you want to read those off to me, you can. But why would chasing a dream be worth it? Is my first question to the group. And I'll give you all like about a minute or two to answer that question. Okay, someone said, sorry. It looks like I'm getting some feedback on that. So, okay, so I'm still waiting for more responses because I've only received 2. And like I said, this is a conversation. So somebody said to lead a successful and happy life, which is true. Someone also said, because that's where we want to reach, give us inner satisfaction. It's true as well. To give us purpose and direction, because it will give you happiness and satisfaction. So these are all things that are true. But I want to dig in deeper on what it means to be happy and successful, because to everybody, that might mean something different. So when we talk about happiness or we talk about success, like, what does that look like for you? What do you want to achieve, right? So when you say life is about fulfillment, and what would be fulfilling to you? And feel free to put that in the chat box as well. And Praveen, I'm totally going to come to your comment about it not being worth it, because that's fair and we can have that discussion as well. So do we do it for ourselves? If we're all paying attention to the chat box, Kiva just said, because we do it for ourselves and not for society or anybody else. So is that worth it to you? And I'm gonna answer my own question, because I only think that's fair. And feel free to engage with what I'm saying as well. So to me, what was fulfilling was to realize the dreams of my parents. And that's not necessarily the truth. Everybody's purpose is different. So that's what motivated me. So it had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with what I could achieve for myself. But to me, it was worth it because of what I could achieve for my parents and what I could achieve for my family. And so now I invite you guys to think about that. Why do you do it? What does happiness or fulfillment look like? What are you striving for? Because if you're going to work hard for something, you better make sure it means a lot to you. So I'm going to open you all to answer that question as well. What would be fulfilling to you? What do you want to achieve? And this doesn't have to be a career choice. It could just be something that you want to do in the world. I'll give you about 30 seconds to answer that question. Don't all chime in at once. So that's fair, right? A life without regrets. Fulfillment is when, so somebody wrote in the chat, fulfillment is when you are satisfied and happy that you did something and did it to the best of your abilities. And then that gives you inner peace. And that could be fulfillment. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So long as you identify whatever it is that you want in your life and you strive for it and you achieve it, then you do live a life without regrets. And then you are fulfilled because you achieved it. So again, like for me, it was all about my family. And I'll tell you why in just a sec. But back to the comment about like, somebody had said that they don't feel like chasing your dreams is worth it. Let's talk about that. And then I'll move on to the background portion. So ultimately, when we say chase your dreams, we are talking about your dreams. We're not talking about anybody else's dreams. So inherently, I would like to argue that it should be worth it because it is yours. And beyond that, if you are not happy in the direction in which your life is going, if you do not feel fulfilled the way that everyone else is describing fulfillment or happiness, then that is something that is up to you to change. So if you at this moment do not feel like it's worth it, it's not up to me to make up your mind. It is up to you to make sure that that changes. Because if it does not, then you will not be able to ever see the fulfillment of what you want to achieve because you won't feel like it's worth doing. And hopefully, I want you to comment at the end of this and to tell me what your thoughts really are about whether or not you saw that my journey was worth it. And if it's not, I accept that. Like I said, I'm here to have a conversation. So I'll talk to you more throughout this about what got me to where I am, and then we'll see how you feel. So some background. Technical issues. All right, so I put in a little like blip, a little like bio, a little explanation, I'm sorry, about this book. But I'm pretty much gonna explain it to you. So feel free to read it or feel free to listen to me, either way it works. So before I start, I think I should talk to you all about my favorite book because it has a lot to do with where I am today. And the lessons that I learned from this book are lessons that have taken me throughout my life. So my favorite book ever is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And just so you know, this is one of the most translated books throughout all time. So I'm sure you could probably find it in whatever language you want to read it in. Obviously, I've read it in English. My mother's read it in Spanish, and I encourage everyone else to read it in whatever language they feel comfortable in. But in short, this book is about following your own personal legend. And I'm pretty sure that's what they call it. So when we talk about what is your personal legend, in this book, it's fictional, and the character has this dream that he wants to go to Egypt. He lives in the southernmost tip of Spain, and he's a shepherd at the time. And he goes to, without telling you too much, because I do want you to read the book, he goes to like a fortune teller, and she says, well, this dream that you're having, it means that you should go to Egypt. So figure out how to do that. And he goes on this long quest to try to find his personal treasure under the Egyptian pyramids. And throughout the entire story, you learn a few things. One thing is that each one of us has our own personal legend that we were placed on this earth to complete. And you can accept that or you cannot accept that. But I do think that Each one of us has an idea on what we're good at and what we would like to do. And consider that your personal legend. And then the other thing that it talks about is when you're on your way to achieve this goal, all of the world conspires to help you achieve it. But just as you're about to achieve it, things get really difficult. And that's why I was talking about, is it worth it? What's your purpose? Because to get past that point where it gets very difficult, you have to be very in tune with what it is that you want and what it is that you're looking for. So if you haven't read this book before, please read it. But to me, it's been very influential. Well, not only to me, but to my mother as well, because I think following your personal legend, first of all, is just a beautiful thing. But beyond that, the idea of connecting with the world to fulfill your purpose is something that very much resonates with me. And so when we talk about chasing your dreams, I don't mean accomplishing, like finishing your degree. I mean, kind of like what we were talking about with the first question, accomplishing whatever it is that you find to be fulfilling. And that could be absolutely anything. So to some people, it could be, you know, for me, it was becoming a lawyer, which now has to change because I've done it already. But in another respect, it could be to be a father or to be a mom, you know what I mean? So, or it could be to have your own garden. It could be anything that really lights your heart on fire, if you will. So there's more rules because I'm a lawyer and I like rules. The other thing that I think, or other things that I've held on to throughout my life beyond The Alchemist is a few life rules that I will tell you I am still working on today because it's really hard. The first thing is accountability. And this is what I was talking about when Praveen was mentioning that it's not worth it. This is your dream. It's not mine. It's not your classmates. It's not your parents' dream. Whatever it is that you identify is yours. And so you have to own it as though it's yours. And with ownership, that means that you also have to own the fact that if you fail, those failures are yours. And if you succeed, those successes are yours as well. But the bottom line is the only way that you'll be able to achieve whatever it is for you, is to make sure that you take ownership for it. Because imagine a situation where you say, well, I didn't achieve my dreams because so-and-so person said I couldn't, or I didn't achieve my dreams because, you know, this other person didn't give me the opportunity. That kind of language takes away your power to achieve your dream. So before we start with my story, just know that accountability is number one. Beyond that is intentionality. So when you identify your dreams, so let's say you say, I want to open my own garden. I want to be a doctor. I want to be a teacher. I want to be an Olympic gymnast, whatever it is, right? You have to be intentional about the steps that you take to get there, because nothing in life happens by accident. I didn't just accidentally become a lawyer the same way you didn't accidentally end up in college, right? Everything happens on purpose after you take intentional steps to achieve it. I guess to put it in a more simplistic form, like think about babies, right? Like babies don't just start running. Babies have to crawl, then they must walk, then they must run. And each of these steps are necessary before you can achieve the running portion. And the last part is unwavering discipline. So what I mean by that is you have to take action every single day in furtherance of your dream. There has to be this momentum, this thing that you have in the forefront of your mind and that you work towards. In that way, you know that you are making your habit of working towards it. So let's say you go to school and your going to school doesn't necessarily further your dream of being a gymnast, or it doesn't further your dream of being a gardener, or any other dream that you may have. That means you go to school, you do what you need to do for school, and then you do what you need to do for yourself, because you should be working on yourself and on your dreams more than you should be working on anything else. Because yes, everything else that you're doing is important, but you too are important, and your needs and your dreams and your desires are important too. So those are the rules, and we can go over them. And if you have any questions, this is another moment where you can feel free to ask. But just know that these are things that I'm still working on every day, and I'm working on achieving every day. So let's talk a little bit about me. And actually, before we get there, I want to engage you all again, just because I'm just curious. So based on what you know about me so far and everything that I've said, how old do you guys think I am? Throw out numbers in the chat box. I'll give y'all about a minute. Wow, y'all are really spot on. Yeah, okay. I wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page. So I'm 25, so for those who guessed 25, kudos. And the reasons why I brought up my age is because I want y'all to understand that I'm not that old, I'm just your age. I was basically at St. Aloysius yesterday. And so the things that I'm about to tell you are things that pretty much anybody could do. And it's just about making sure that you're accountable, intentional, and disciplined. So thank y'all. I was worried for a second, but this is good. Okay, so right, so I'm 25. It feels like I was just in your position yesterday. And so what I'm about to go through are things that I did while I was in school that led me to where I am out of school. And again, like I am not abnormal. I am not out of this world. Anything that I say I have done, you can absolutely do. So, all right, so I gave you a picture of the world, just so that we have a better understanding of where I'm coming from. So hopefully this works the way I want it to. So you guys are about here, and I'm sorry if the arrow is not perfectly in place, but I wanted to get as close as possible. So you guys are about here. If you didn't see the arrow, there's my beautiful arrow. And my family is coming from a place that's a lot smaller. So we are about here. And the funny part is, you see, I put an arrow on India. You can pretty much still see India. If I had put an arrow on where my family's from, it would cover the entire island. So my family's from a small island in the Caribbean called the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic shares the island with Haiti. This one island, these two sides of the same island, they speak different languages. So my parents speak Spanish. Folks on the Haitian side of the island speak Creole. And we can go, if you guys are interested in this too, like I can tell you more about the history of the island and why it came to be. So I'll tell you a piece of it today, but if you want to know more, just let me know. So the reason for the language differences was colonialism. Back in 1492, when the colonist Christopher Columbus came over from Spain, Hispaniola, which was the island that's now Dominican Republic and Haiti, were one of the first places that he landed. And the reason why Christopher Columbus is relevant to me, because he is, is that the aftermath of colonialism and modern day US imperialism have left these countries, Haiti more so than the Dominican Republic, they're just not as wealthy, right? Especially when you talk about the United States, is the short story. So because of that, my parents heard, as everybody hears, that people in the United States have this American dream where you can go, you can work hard, and you can make a lot of money. And because of that, around, I want to say the late 1980s, early 1990s, my parents decided, well, let's go to New York. Background on that is there was a huge wave of Dominicans who came over to New York in the United States during a diaspora. So New York made sense. And so here is where I grew up, is the short story. Now, I just want to give you a little bit more background on what people know when they think about the Dominican Republic. So if you Google it right now, what you'll probably see is this. Not this exact picture, because I'll admit I took this and I'm very proud of it. But this is more or less what you'll think about, like this tropical paradise. But in reality, even though that does exist, and whenever you go to the beach, it pretty much does look like this. That's not how people are living. I wanted to share with you all pictures of where my parents came from, just because I think it would make more sense to you. But my dad pretty much came from this rural countryside where my grandparents were farmers. And my mother came from the capital where, I mean, it's more, I guess you can say it's more like a city, but it definitely isn't what it is today. And so they came from these two very different parts of the Dominican Republic to New York, hoping to get a better life. And about maybe 6 or 7 years afterwards is when I came into the picture. And my mom always says, as a joke, that I was born with my boxing gloves on because she felt like I was always some sort of fighter. And I guess in a way I was, but I don't think she's fully realized that when we talk about purpose, that she was part of that reason and part of that purpose. And the reason for that is because both of them came over to the United States for me, and I also have a sister who's about 10 years older than me. So they came over for us very much to give us a better life. And they quickly realized that they hated it here. Like, can you imagine that? They came to New York City and they said, I miss my island, I miss my family, I miss my friends, I don't want to be here. But being in New York and being in the United States gives our kids the opportunities that we never had. So they both had their college degrees. I think my mother studied accounting and my dad studied engineering. And when they came over here, it didn't mean anything. So my mother worked at a clothing store, I think. And my dad worked as a cab driver, and they kind of just made do that way. And the reason why that matters to me is because I felt like it was my purpose to uplift them, because I'm 25. They sacrificed about 20 or so years of their life to make sure that I could push ahead. And so I felt like my purpose was to make sure that they knew that their sacrifice was worth it. And you know, when I decided that I wanted to go on this path, that is the single thing that I continue to remind myself of. And that's what made the journey worth it for me. So what did I do? When I was a kid, everybody used to tell me that I should be a lawyer, because to them, being a lawyer meant that you talk a lot. And that was about it. And I thought it was hysterical, but I wanted to see what it was about. So when I was around 16 years old, I joined a program at school. It was a mock trial program, and they were connected with the Bronx District Attorney's Office. So I got to work with real lawyers who worked as prosecutors, charging criminals. and taking on those cases and see what it was really about. And through that, oh, and I was also a part of this program called KIPP, K-I-P-P, KIPP through college. They also got me an internship in law. So I had this really weird summer when I was 16, where through the mock trial program, I won an internship with the Bronx District Attorney's Office. And then through KIPP, I got an internship at a civil firm in the Bronx. And I accepted them both because at 16, I thought, why not? I'm not really doing anything else with my summer. Let's see if everybody else kind of agrees that this might be a good idea, and let's see if I like it. So I went through the program, and I believe halfway through the program with the prosecutor's office, I was told to go to trial just to see one. And I walked over, I sat in the middle of, just imagine this ginormous courtroom that was completely filled. And it was a murder trial straight out of a movie where there were 3 defendants and 3 attorneys on the defense side, and then the prosecutors. And it was this big debacle. To me, I remember it as a circus, and I remember loving every second of it. There was something about that back and forth, the intellectual debate, that I really, really enjoyed. And so from there on out, I made up my mind. I was gonna make sure that I uplifted my family by being a lawyer. That was my purpose. That was my dream. And so that's what I did. So I took that as my own accountability, and then I took intentional actions afterwards. So I was 16. After that, I continued working at the civil firm because I thought that would give me the best amount of experience before I went off to college. Then I went off to college. And just so you know, when you get a law degree in the United States, you cannot get a law degree while you're in college. It is a separate doctorate degree, and it is a terminal degree. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, feel free to interrupt. I just heard somebody speaking. I wasn't sure if somebody had any questions. So, with the college and the JD. So when you go to university, you have to pick a major, any major pretty much, and then you can apply to law school after the fact, and it's considered a graduate level degree. So I went to college and I knew, all right, I'm gonna go to law school. So what do I have to do to get to law school? Well, you have to get good grades, is number 1. Second, you have to take a placement exam in order to get in. Okay, how do I do that? Because as a child of immigrants, I don't have a lot of money. So I have to do what I can with what I have. So I picked a major that I loved. I love history. And as Dr. Pinto at St. Aloysius would tell you, I am infatuated with history. Indian history was one of the coolest things that I ever studied. So I picked history because I loved it. And I knew that I could get good grades because I loved it. And that would lead me to my next goal of being a lawyer that I knew I would love. So I took all my history classes. I figured out, how do I get straight A's? Because that's what I need to get. And it wasn't perfect, believe me, even though I tried. And I worked really hard. And then I knew I had to take the placement exam. So I thought, all right, I can't afford to pay for a class. Those classes tend to run for a minimum of at least like $1,000 US, and I don't have that. So how do I do that? Okay, I heard of this program that offered kind of like jobs. I don't want to put it in quotes. I guess it was a job, but it was a brand ambassador position where I pretty much told everybody about the company. I explained what they do. I explained what their services were. I explained what their classes looked like. And in turn, I would get a free course. And that's how I did it. So I worked for them for about 2 years. And when the time came for me to take the exam, I took the course. And I feel like it's just as important for me to tell you my failures as my triumphs. So I didn't do well. I didn't even finish the course the first time because it was so hard to do at the same time that I was doing my full course load. So I stopped, and then I did it again. And the second time, I was way more successful because I waited until the next fall semester. And then I took the exam, and I worked with classmates to help practice and prepare for the exam. And at this point, I've lined it all up, right? I took my classes, I got my good grades, I took this exam, and everybody was telling me, you know, take some time off before you go to law school. You will regret not taking time off. So I say, okay, I've done everything that I need to do. Everything has been intentionally set so that I'm ready to go to law school in the fall of 2016. Now what? And thankfully, that's when I went to St. Aloysius. And that's where I learned more about myself than I think any other period in my life, to be honest. I learned about, because that's important too, right? Like as you're moving towards your goals, you really want to have a strong understanding of who you are as a person and how you function best. Like, are you a morning person? Are you a night person? Where do you get your best work done? How does things happen? What gets you upset? What makes you happy? Things like that. So I learned a lot about that while I was in India. And then I came back to the States. While I was there too, I would go to St. Aloysius during the day and then go home and fill out my applications at night. I think I must have completed at least like 20 different applications for school, which here is a lot because each application costs like $70 to $100. Yeah, I see somebody raise their hand. If you want, I don't know if somebody will unmute you or, oh, by mistake. Okay, no worries. So I went to St. Aloysius during the day and then came home and did my applications at night. And by the time I was leaving India, I had pretty much narrowed down my choices to about 2 schools. I came back, and that same month, I went to go see the schools, and I chose UConn. And that August, I was ready to go. And why was I able to kind of make all of these steps happen despite the fact that I was in a different country, I was moving around? Because I was intentional. And I made sure that I outlined my steps every step of the way to the extent that I could. I was super methodical. So then I started at UConn that fall. And it was absolutely one of the most frightening experiences that I've ever had, because it was the first time in my life that I was by myself. I didn't have any friends. I wasn't from this state. I didn't know anybody. And I didn't have anybody in my family who was a lawyer who could teach me how to be a good lawyer. And so I knew I had to be accountable and I had to make it happen. And so I think the short story is for that first year is there was a lot of tears. But what I ended up coming back to was this idea of, is it worth it? And I thought it was, again, because I wasn't doing this for myself. It had nothing to do with me. I knew that if I succeeded, this would be a success for my parents. This would be a success for my grandparents. To me, it was almost poetic that I could say my grandparents, the rice farmers, produced somebody who could be an attorney in the United States. So I was asked, was it scarier than coming to India? I think they're two different types of scary. India was just scary because I knew that I couldn't speak the language if anything happened. And I wasn't sure, I couldn't express myself the way that I wanted to express myself if something happened. And I couldn't call my family if I got sick, you know what I mean? And I did get sick. So things like that in India were scary, but it didn't last that long. The fear in law school absolutely persisted. So I think I was scared when I got to the Mumbai airport. And then I met with everybody else that I was studying abroad with. And then I met everybody at St. Aloysius, and it wasn't scary anymore. And I learned words in Hindi, which wasn't very useful while I was in Bangalore, but it was totally useful when I went back to Mumbai and Delhi. And then it was okay. But yeah, the India fear lasted like a little while I was trying to get adjusted. And then you realize like India is no different. It's just like anywhere else, and you get used to it. But with law school, I always felt like the whole year I was pretty much scared because I was trying to make sure that I got good grades, and that I made it happen. And to give you a full picture, like I moved into my apartment with nothing but like a couch. Like I barely had a bed, I barely had anything. I was doing work from like this light in the stairway of my apartment building. And I was just trying to make sure that I made enough money to kind of get a bed and get myself situated, and then go to school and do all of these things to make myself successful. It was a lot. And then I realized somewhere in the middle of my first year that I didn't understand business. And it bothered me a lot because I'm not the kind of person that likes to rely on anybody else for information. And I always had these dreams about one day opening my own business. And I didn't like the fact that I would potentially have to pay for somebody else to tell me what to do. And so on a crazy leap of faith, at the end of my first year, I attended an information session about the master's in business administration. And I thought, I'm not going to do this because I have to take another standardized test, and I haven't seen math in at least 4 years. And no, I'm not doing it. About a month later, I thought, all right, I have to do this because it's now or never. And I don't know when I'm going to see this opportunity again. So I finished finals in May. I bought a book. It was like a 5-pound book of questions. I got about halfway through and I quit. And I told myself, I'm done. I don't like geometry. It's not my thing. It's never going to be my thing. Let's just take this test and see what happens. I took the test, and sure enough, my math scores were not great, but my reading and writing scores were great because at that point I had already been in law school for about a year, so I'm used to these things. I applied and I got in, and I had to take out all of my law school courses, put in all of my master's courses, and this is something that wasn't even planned. This wasn't a part of the dream. But I felt like in the long run, it would help me be more successful either as a lawyer or doing something else. And so that's what I did. I kind of put all my doctoral courses to the side, and I started all my master's courses, and I met a completely new group of friends, and this wasn't even scary anymore because I had already done all of these other scary things, that this was just something new that I was trying. So I finished that year of my master's courses. And as you can imagine, my finance and my accounting classes were probably the hardest, but I learned so much, and I realized that the law and business should actually be something that is taught together, because even when you're a lawyer, there's always business considerations that you need to keep in mind. It could be your client's goals and your client's purpose or what they want, or it could be your own, because as a law firm, you need to maintain your own book of business and you need to make sure that your business stays afloat. And so it was crazy in the moment, but it was absolutely one of the best decisions that I ever made. And then during my last year, I was still participating, as you guys have heard, in kind of the student organizations on campus, because I thought it was important to give people in my community a voice and to give my classmates a voice, especially because, as you know, so Trump is our president, And he became president my first year of law school. And that made a lot of my experience a lot harder. So I needed to make sure that I stuck with my classmates and that we did what we could together in light of the political environment that transcended into our school environment, to make sure that we made it. And I did a whole bunch of things, like the clinic, and I was doing the journal, just because I felt like I did the journal because I felt like I had to. I feel like I'm running short on time, so I'm speeding a little bit through. And then I overloaded on classes so that I could finish. I wanted to make sure, even though I was taking on an extra master's, that I was not taking any extra time. It was important to me to finish with my friends because we have a licensing exam that we have to do afterwards, and I did not want to do that alone. And that was it. And then I did the same thing that I did in college. During my last semester, I left. I didn't study abroad, but I did get an internship in New York City, and that's how I got my first job. What you need to know before I move on about intentionality that I skipped over is that I made sure while I was in school that I was taking intentional steps to make sure that I got employed afterwards. Because what is the point of having your degree if you cannot use it, especially a law degree, because it's so expensive? At least that's what I thought. I think my opinions have changed, but that's what I thought at the time. And so I did make sure that I was getting jobs that aligned with potentially what I wanted to do going forward. And so I got a job at Sikorsky Aircraft Corporation. And while I was there, I made sure to meet with the attorneys that worked with Sikorsky. And so in that semester that I told you I left and I got an internship, I was able to work with the attorneys that used to work or that continue to work with Sikorsky Aircraft Corporation, right? So that was the story, but there's still a lot of intentionality behind the steps that I was taking. And then I graduated and I took this licensing exam. And the short story is about that is the exam is 2 days, 9 to 5 both days with an hour break both days, which actually turns into like a 30-minute break. And you're actually working when they say 9 to 12 or from 1 to 5. You're actually, like, I ran out of time for that test. And so we studied for about 2 months straight, Monday through Sunday, pretty much like 9 a.m. to 7 or 8 p.m. every day. And then we studied as a group once we got tired of our books. And that was that. And then I found myself sometime in October shaking with excitement when I received my results that I had passed. And I guess we come full circle now, because I don't want to run over time, about whether or not it was worth it. For me, it was twofold. One, for the reasons that y'all listed. I was personally fulfilled and professionally, right? And then beyond that, I was able to give my mother and my family, my parents, something that they had never even imagined that we could achieve, which was not one, but these 2 degrees that now we could say is ours as a family. And since then, I started at this small firm called Fitzpatrick and Hunt. And we did aviation work. And then mid-pandemic, which is a story for another day that I can totally answer for you guys, I managed to get this role at McCarter in English. And in that transition, I was able to get I have been able to get a lot more hands-on experience than I've ever dreamed of. And so to me, my dream came true about a month ago, because now I was a lawyer. I was able to purchase the car of my dreams, to live in a place that I love, and to give this sense of fulfillment to my parents, and to show them that it was worth it and that coming to the United States made sense. And so I guess since I feel like I'm coming close on time and I haven't taken any like other questions, that's my story. It was all about accountability, intentionality, and serious discipline. So waking up every day, like when we talked about that exam, waking up every day, Monday through Sunday, and making sure that no matter how I felt, how much sleep I get, how much work I have, how much food I ate, I got my work done. And every day I wake up humbled that I was able to get this far and that I'm actually doing it. And that when I bring tears to my mother's eyes or to my father's eyes, it's because I know that I've achieved something for them. And so that's it. It was a lot, but that's it. And so, oh, I forgot to show you guys some things. So this is where we're at, right? Like this is where they live now. We're still not in this super fancy luxury place, and it's not all palm trees and bright blue waters, right? It's just us in our quaint little home, and one day hopefully we can expand. But you know, we've made it. And since then, my dad was inspired to go back to school. He just finished. He's now a lawyer out there. And so, yeah, so that's the story. So let me know, do y'all have any more questions? And please don't feel shy just because I told you. This is about you. I told you about me, but it was for you.
Now I invite Rosemary Korean to begin the question and answer session.
I see somebody raise their hand, but I don't know if it was on purpose. If you can't unmute yourself, feel free to put the question in the chat box. So while we're waiting for those questions, because I see everybody's chomping at the bit to ask questions, I'm being silly. I do want to say thank you. Thank you for giving me this platform. Thank you especially to Madam Shalini, not just for imparting all of your wisdom upon me, but also asking me to participate in this. I hope that me sharing a little piece of where I'm from and my story has encouraged you all to realize yours. And I don't remember who it was at the beginning. If you're still on the call, Praveen, I do want to know if you still feel like it's not worth it. And in general, I do want to know your thoughts on what you think could help you achieve your dreams. So feel free to put that in the chat box as well. But yeah, thank you all for giving me this platform and for listening. And I hope in one way or another it was helpful. Okay, I'll give it like 30 more seconds if anybody has any questions. But if not, I'm gonna consider that a win because that means I explained everything very well. All right. So with that, I will turn it over either to Brenda or Madam Shalini. Oh, I think somebody asked the question. What if your dreams are big? So that's a good question. And we think it's impossible to achieve them. So I don't like the word impossible. I think you should split up the M and the P in impossible, and you get your actual meaning to that word. When I was a little kid, I told myself that I wanted to be a Supreme Court justice, right? And I think about within like a year or two, I told myself, that's stupid, that's too big. No little girl from the Bronx that looks like me will be able to get on the Supreme Court. And Sonia Sotomayor became a justice in the Supreme Court. Sonia Sotomayor is a little girl from the Bronx, right? Like she was a little girl from the Bronx. She went to school like down the street from where I live. And I thought, no, they're still too big. And I think telling myself that was one of the biggest mistakes that I'd ever made, because it doesn't make sense, right? Like no dream on this earth is too big, because if that's what we believe, we wouldn't have airplanes or helicopters. We would have never been to the moon, right? Like the people who dared to dream big were the people who changed this world for the better. Imagine if the person, so from what I understand, Igor Sikorsky, because I know way too much about helicopters at this point, created the helicopter. Imagine if he had said this was dumb, right? Or if the person who created the airplane thought this was dumb. We wouldn't have them. I would have never visited India, right? Like, so if they're big, great. All you have to do is put out the steps to achieve it. And once you set out those steps, make smaller steps. And you'll see that over time, they won't be so big anymore. Now, the second question was, what if we are under the pressure of someone, which is stopping us from following our dreams? I think that depends, right? Like it depends on what the pressure is, who that's coming from, and what its effect on you is, which is very much a personal question to ask yourself. But I think what it comes down to is you have your singular life, right? Like this life that you're living is yours. And I would hate for you, somebody earlier in the chat was talking about living life without regrets. I would hate for you to one day get to a point in your life and look back and say, I didn't do what I wanted to do. And I think that's something else that has motivated me throughout my life. I want to make sure that I make my future self proud. So depending on what those pressures are, I'm not sure how much flexibility you have, but understand that the life that you live is for you. And your first priority above all should be to you, because that's the person that you look at every day in the mirror. You know what I mean? And so recognize that just like that person who might be putting pressure on you might be important to you. That's why the pressure exists. You're important too. Somebody else asked, if there's no clear-cut dream, what if you don't have a dream? What if the idea of what you're striving to achieve is vague? I think you haven't done the self-reflection you need to do to figure it out, right? Like, identify what do you want out of life? Like, what will make you feel happy if today was the last day on your last day on earth? You know what I mean? And and I flesh that out. And it is okay if you don't figure it out right away. I think I was privileged to understand what I wanted to do very early, but I also didn't know specifically what I wanted to do in the law. And so what you're asking is kind of like the process that I'm going through now. So I'm sitting down with myself and thinking, like, what effect do I want to have, if any? Or what skills do I want to have? And the answer to that is whatever helps me achieve whatever my life's purpose is. So think to yourself, like, once I'm gone, what effect do I want to leave on this world, on my family, on anything? And whatever the answer to that question is, your dream is whatever helps you get there. What if we know the steps we can see that the journey isn't easy, but worth a try? What if to achieve my dream, there's lack of support? So if I understand your question correctly, no journey is easy. So let's start there. And I wanted to make sure that I shared with you all, like, some of my pitfalls as well as my triumphs. So, you know, like, I cried a lot, like during my first year and during that last licensing exam and during my first year as a lawyer, because it's hard. And when you grow, the only way that you grow is when you're in situations where you feel uncomfortable, and that discomfort hurts a lot. And the reason why it becomes worth it is because you have that purpose, right? In terms of lack of support, I understand that 1,000%, because I didn't have support, not because they didn't want to support me, but because my family didn't know how. And what I started to do was putting people in my circle who can provide me with that support. So part of that was my friends, because they were there with me. The other part of that was some professors who can encourage me along and show me the way. And the last part of that was practitioners. So people who have already done what I want to do. And I would just ask everybody else questions since I didn't have that support at home. And then financially, I ended up working 2, 3, 4 jobs at a time just to make it happen. And that's not something that I'm necessarily recommending. But what I'm saying is you can artificially create that support for yourself. And that can be a part of your intentional steps to success. So if you want, since I know the law the best, if you want to be a lawyer, right, you speak to a whole bunch of lawyers and say, what did you do to get here? And what are you doing? And so you can use that information to inform yours. And that's pretty much how I built my career to this point, just asking other people questions and leaning on my colleagues and my friends for support throughout the journey. I think, and feel free to stop me if I think I'm over on time. I think I got asked, okay, so 2 more questions. Praveen said that he's satisfied, but he does have a lot of existential questions. And I think it ties into Rosemary's question and the question before about what if you don't know? And I'm going to answer it the same way. And I also encourage you to read The Alchemist. You have to give yourself the space to figure it out for yourself, because nobody can answer those questions for you but you. And life isn't going to give you those answers. You are. So that accountability piece, you have to take ownership of the fact that you don't know what you want to do, or that you don't know what you're doing with your life or where you want to end up. That's okay. But you have to take ownership and tell yourself, all right, so how am I going to figure this out? Right? Like, what's it going to take? What means something to me? And from whatever it is that you kind of take away some sense of passion, purpose, desire, meaning, you want to hold on to that. And again, like Rome wasn't built in a day. You're not going to figure this out over time, but you need to be intentional about figuring it out. You cannot, because you were talking about like living life aimlessly and like having this vain existence. And the reality is, unless you give it meaning, it will not have meaning. Unless you decide that you want to figure out what it is that your purpose here is, or what it is that your dream is, you won't figure it out. Nobody's going to give it to you on a silver platter. And so crack open a journal, crack open a book, right? Start writing, start thinking, start talking to people around you, and start really digging deep into yourself. And ask, what if today was my last day, right? Or like, what will I have wanted to achieve? What will I have wanted to do? How will I have wanted to affect the lives of those around me and to affect the world, my world or the world, right? Ask yourself these questions, and don't stop asking these questions until you have answers to them that light your heart on fire, right? That make you want to get up and do something. And I think it will all figure itself out. But the biggest mistake that I think you can make is to wait for these answers to come to you about what your dreams are and what will make you feel good, because nobody's going to come knocking on your door. You have to do that. And so that's it.
Now, Ms. Vilma Neeta Vas, Faculty, Department of Psychology, would like to make an announcement.
The Alumni Reconnect Alumni Outreach Program is working towards conducting more sessions like this in the coming days and creating new avenues for students' growth. Stay tuned for more information. Thank you.
I would like to invite Pratap to propose the vote of thanks.
It is now my pleasant duty to propose the vote of thanks. On behalf of St. Aloysius College and the Department of Psychology, I express my sincere gratitude to Ms. Sherix Alicia, attorney with MacArthur and English, United States of America, for spending time with us this afternoon. For her, it is 5 a.m. Thank you very much for being a part of this alumni outreach and alumni reconnect program and helping us build a community of hope by giving your story, your success story. It was truly inspiring. I thank our rector, Reverend Father Dionysius Voss SJ, also the director of Listening and Learning Center, co-founder of Mano Tejika, for being there always. I thank our respected principal, Dr. Father Praveen Martis SJ, for his constant support and encouragement. Thank you, Father. I thank Dr. Vincent Mascarenhas, Dean, International Program at St. Aloysius College, for his introductory note. Thank you, sir. I extend my sincere thanks to team of professors of the Department of Psychology, student volunteers, Mano Tejika team for making this webinar a success. A special mention and thanks to Dr. Shalini Ayappa, who always motivates us and lifts our spirits by always being positive and hopeful. Thank you, ma'am. I thank all the students for joining in to build this community of hope. Thank you all.
It was a pleasure interacting with Ms. Sherix and participants. Watch out for our next webinar, Connect to Create a Future. We will keep you posted. Thank you and have a great week.